but really to keep up with the staggering amount of performance that we are bringing into the car, we need more than Moore's law. And this is where I'm a very big believer that chiplets is the right technology to now cost effectively really bring that technology in the car and allowing us to have better and safer cars.
Are you ready for new and unfamiliar challenges around die-to-die connectivity, chiplet integration, and system reliability? Synopsys, backed by its broad experience, close ecosystem collaborations, and comprehensive IP and EDA solution, offers help for fast chiplet-based multi-die system development. Visit synopsys.com/multi-die. Hello, and welcome to the Dig Deeper Chiplet video podcast series. I'm Ron Wilson, the host of this series, and I'd like to get started by introducing a couple of people. Junko Yoshida is the editor-in-chief of the Ojo-Yoshida Report and the organizer of the series. And our guest today is Bart Plackle, who is the vice president of automotive at Imec. And I think probably the best way to get started is, Bart, could you tell us a little bit about what Imec is, what your role is there, and why we're talking about automotive in a chiplet series?
Yeah, my pleasure. So my name is Bart Plackle. Spent my whole career in automotive. Of that career, almost 20 years at Intel. And recently I joined Imec as a VP automotive because what we're seeing is that we're embarking into a very interesting time for automotive, as what we can see is that it's probably the biggest shift in the car values as we're seeing over the history of the lifetime of automotive. In the past, a car was all about the looks, it was about the engine, it was about the horsepower. And right now what we're seeing is it's all about the heart, it's all about the performance of the car. And the reason why it's so important is every bit of performance gives you better driving. So the more performance you have, the better or the more complex neural network algorithms you can process, the more cameras you can process, or lidars, or whatever type of sensors. So we're in a stage right now that the heart and the soul of a car is shifting away from an engine and how the car feels driving into really like the brain that now can move you from A to B in a safer place. So that's what's happening from the ADAS side, but the same is happening for the in-cabin side, where today I still found it interesting that most of us we take our cell phone and then screencast whatever is on our cell phone on the car interior. But the car is probably the best intrusive, immersive digital experience you can have. So if we now have the right capabilities and the connectivity and the right performance there, then this should be your best digital vehicle on our digital office on wheels or home on wheels. So both of those things, making it smarter and better and safer driving and the immersive experience, all those things needs more performance. And that's exactly why I'm so happy now to be part of Imec, is because we see that Moore's law itself is no longer sufficient. So Moore's law is not that, but really to keep up with the staggering amount of performance that we are bringing into the car, we need more than Moore's law. And this is where I'm a very big believer that chiplets is the right technology to now cost effectively really bring that technology in the car and allowing us to have better and safer cars.
You just rattled out the entire thesis of chiplet, but the automotive. But let me ask you this.
Start over again.
Yeah, no, this is fine. This is fantastic. So my question is that we understand the motivation of automakers, right? They want more performance, and the more performance brings better experience. Where does chiplet come into that picture then?
Yeah, but so the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, how do we get more performance? And up to now, typically how you get a TikTok, and so one generation to minimize the risk, you change the architecture, and then you change the process technology. And with each of these steps, you could go higher and higher in clock, and you could pack more and more transistors onto a monolithic architecture, so it's a die itself. And this is now where we're really getting in trouble, because we need so much compute power that we no longer can fit all the transistors on a single die. And even if we would be able to put all the transistors on a die, the closer we go to the maximal exposure or the reticle, the more errors or faults you're going to have in your circuitry. And this really is very bad for your yield. So the larger your die gets, the more chances is that a certain defect will render your die inoperative and you have to throw it away. So the yield cost of such a high-end architecture is really rising exponentially. So we no longer can fit enough transistors, and even if we would be able to fit it, we will get so much yield loss because the die is getting really to the maximum reticle size and it's no longer producible. So that's no longer going to work. And then what is the result of that? What can we do with that? Is now let's take a step back and let's look at that monolithic architecture. And if you zoom into it, you find a lot of building blocks. You typically find a GPU, you find memory, CPU, I/O, AI accelerators. So now is the right time to think about it. Okay, if we need to now spread those logic across multiple dies, then let's do it at logical boundaries. And once we have those logical boundaries, then let's standardize those boundaries that I can start mixing and matching from different suppliers. There's no reason why the CPU, the GPU, the accelerator, all that IP needs to come from one vendor. So if you do the splitting in the right way with the right standardization, you can start Legoing your architecture together. And the beauty of that is that certain OEM, he might have certain features where he really wants to differentiate on AI, so he can put a bigger AI engine, where another car manufacturer is like, no, my differentiation is more on the branch decode, on the CPU side, so I put more differentiating there. Or an OEM say like, no, I really want to really differentiate on safety, on I/O, so they can mix and match there. So it's really the Lego approach where you can piece together your architecture to really fit your requirements for your specific model years and model lines. So for a low or medium or premium, you can really compose different architecture for different levels.
It seems like kind of presumed in the mix and match approach is standard interfaces. But the auto industry has always been kind of famous for using their own bus standards rather than anybody else's. Do you visualize the auto industry adopting UCIe or a special subset of it, or are they going to have to do something entirely their own again?
So the good thing is, so yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right, is that there are many examples in the past where the OEMs didn't really work well together. And most, if you're familiar with that, the media optical system transfer was a nice example, as they standardized the optical ring and the MAC layer, but still those devices couldn't talk to each other. So right now, as you look at the latest and greatest, what's the development cost to build like a state-of-the-art plus 1,000, 2,000 TOPS AS application-specific platform? Today it's already in $1 billion, and if you extrapolate it in a couple of years, it will be $2 billion or whatsoever. So there's an enormous economical driving function to start having those OEMs to start to talk to each other. If we develop the way we have been developing, none of the OEMs will have a platform that is cost effective. So they have to go standardization. Standardization means to really lower the overall cost by defining specific functionality with specific interfaces that you can mix and match those. Having that said, if you refer to UCIe is a nice way how you can start connecting those building blocks. It's a standardization on the package level, and it's a standardization on the die to die. But it doesn't go far enough. If you really want to go to a marketplace where you can shop around CPUs and GPUs, just that those two devices talk to each other, that standardization is not sufficient. You need to go higher in the stack, and you need to say, okay, what protocols do those chips have to talk to? If I want to build a system based on chiplets, then you also need to think about how am I going to address security at the package level and at the chiplet level? Are you putting every of that functionality in a specific chiplet? Are you going to assume that certain functionality, like the package management, life cycle management, the functional safety, is that governed both at the package level and bits and pieces of it at chiplet level. Those are the things we need to think about, and that's exactly what we're trying to standardize. Die-to-die package, that's a starter, but by far not enough to have a real interoperable ecosystem. It is enough if you want to just build, if you no longer can build the monolithic solution and you have to force it and split it up in multiple pieces, and you want to keep your proprietary backbone architecture, and that's how you glue it together. That you can do, and that's what some companies are doing. But then again, your development cost is still going to be 1 or 2 billion, because every of those tape outs you're going to do yourself, and that breaks the benefits of really having an open chiplet architecture.
So if I understand you, we've got about 5 independent things all going on here at once. So you've got architectural partitioning, you've got electrical connectivity, you have protocol compatibility, and then you have functional safety partitioning and security partitioning. Is that a solvable problem for mere humans in a supply chain? Or does some standards body have to step in and dictate?
So yeah, so I'm not sure if you follow that, but that's a real big challenge, and that's exactly why in February we did a call to action, said, hey, dear supply base, Moore's law is having issues, and we need to go beyond Moore's law. So really need to think about chiplets. And if you think about chiplets, we have to your point, we have to do all those 5 steps. So we did that call to action in February, and then by our Imec ITF World, we already had like 20 companies saying like, hey, we really see the same problem and we really participate. By June, we did our first get-together of a whole supply chain. So from OSATs, foundries, tier 2s, tier 1s, everyone, we brought everyone together. To really see how are we going to standardize. Can we overhaul standardize everything? So that was the first time in June, and then in October, just a couple of weeks ago, we had 50 companies together here at Imec in Leuven to really see how we're going to tackle the problem. And to your point, that there are so many opens right now that and with 50 companies, it's not easy to streamline and to get it into standard. So what we decided is like, okay, what are the 4 top things where we first going to create a working group, and that's like a team of the willing, where we from these 50 companies we have people that say, okay, we're going to focus on architecture, we're going to focus on security, we are going to focus on on protocol, we are going to focus on quality and reliability. So we have set those up, those working groups, and now these working groups are trying to clear their thoughts on what needs to be hard standardized and what is going to be more like an industry blueprint as a reference design or template. So right now we don't know what we don't know. So trying to standardize everything from basically the bare bone package up to the highest level in the OSI stack, that's a recipe for failure. So we also are going to try to reuse as much as we can, and that's the reason why we are closely working with UCIe, with the automotive working group, and then building on top of that and see what's missing. And we want to lay down our thoughts in a white paper, and then based on that white paper, we want to see how we can turn that into reality and come up with like a blueprint or reference architecture. And with those learnings, we will feed it back into the standardization, into the working group. So it's a crawl, walk, run architecture. We're not going to come up with a miracle standard overnight. The good thing is we still have time, right? If you look at the OEMs, most of the OEMs already have their current architecture locked in till 2028. So realistically, the window of opportunity to really go hard on chiplets is 29, 2030. So we still have some time, but it also means that we need to get going now.
On a kind of a nuts and bolts level, from what I understand, a lot of the early adopters of multi-die modules, whether they call them chiplets or not, have really struggled to get the known good die problem solved, and then struggled with the thermal and mechanical integrity of the assembly. But the auto industry is known for much stricter requirements on all of those issues than the data center industry, for instance. Is this a solvable problem with the current technology, that you can build an automotive grade multi-die assembly out of chiplets?
So yeah, it's a very good question. And if you know my background, one of my previous programs I also worked on with was Intel Ponte Vecchio, and this was really a pure technology marvel. I mean, you have like 47 dies with different foundries, etc. But it also shows you how complex it is. And to your point, in automotive, we have additional requirements. The good thing is, from performance point of view, we don't have to go up to the supercomputers yet. So I think we have a little bit of extra margin. But to your point, the first questions we're getting from every OEM and every tier one, tier two is like two questions. Hey, will it work in automotive? And will it be cost effective? Because everyone can build a golden box, right? So, and that's exactly where Imec is kicking in. So we just kicked off an automotive program, and we are going to investigate like what are the top 3-4 technologies, interconnect technologies that could survive in an automotive context. So that's the reason why we're also working with all the OEMs, or majority, not, I shouldn't say all OEMs, but a lot of OEMs together to really understand what are the requirements. Do we need to have a different JADEC spec, ACQ 100, 200 spec? Do we have to look with electromobility and mobility as a service? Do we have to look at different mission profiles? So we're getting all that knowledge, and based on all that knowledge and based on all the background IP that Imec already has with 3D packaging, we're going to branch predict what are the 1, 2, or 3 top candidates for, and now I'm talking just pure interconnect. We're going to branch predict which are the top candidates. And then we are going to build a reference architecture with mock-up chips that reflect the right thermal stresses for CPU, GPU, memory controllers, I/O. We're going to build that together, and then we're going to really test that out, putting that in the thermal chambers and shock, vibration, humidity, you name it. And then basically, based on these results, we are trying to understand what are the physical reasons why those interconnects fail. And once we know how they fail and why they fail, then you can try to solve them. If the technology is not mature enough, then you can also see whether higher level capabilities like with UACIe, where you have spare lanes, is that a solution? Or do you say, no, we cannot rely on that, and we need to go to the next level of technology of how we can package it. And then we go one step further until we have enough evidence, physical evidence, that we can show to the whole supply chain, like this technology with these roughly sizes of chiplets, with these thermal profiles, in this layer stack, this is how the stress distributes. We can be confident that the balls will not crack, or the lanes will not have oxidation, etc. So this is something that no one has the answer to that today, but that's exactly why we at Imec are kicking off that research program, and it's like a 2-year program. And within that two-year program, with all the feedback of the supply chain, we're hoping to come up with a very clear recommendation. Like this is the best way to do it from a technology perspective, but also making sure that it's affordable. If we come up with a chiplet architecture and then we cut it up in different chiplets, and you should have some savings because of the yield. But if you then have to reinvest all your savings in a much more complex technology stack, then it's going to be pushed out in time, and we cannot offer the market what they so desperately need. So it's going to be a 2-year program to find the answers. Clearly, we're not going to wait 2 years. So as we go, every quarter, we will have new insights, and we will course correct the program. To your point, GATE and having the right test factors, that's also a very important part of it. That from the design, from the get-go, that's the reason why those working groups with standardization and assuming certain system architecture is so important, because you cannot say that everything is out of context. You need to embed a certain context to have a very high scan coverage for your devices. So that's also something that we're tackling.
What interests me, though, is that traditionally speaking, automotive industry is not necessarily the pioneer of new architecture of any processors. I mean, they picked up what's available on the market. So it kind of flipping the landscape kind of interests me, but it also poses some challenges because I'm not saying they're not up to speed, but at the same time, they really need heavily depend on you guys, researchers, scientists, at Imec to shepherd the project, correct?
Yeah, and just I want to emphasize is that this is not a one company effort. The reason why it's going to work out is that within that same research program, we will have OEMs, we will have tier ones, we will have OSATs, and they all contribute their knowledge. And to your point, in the past, the car industry was lagging from technology for 100 years. You're absolutely correct. But right now, if you look what we're doing, we're bringing supercomputers at scale in the market, and those supercomputers needs to have state-of-the-art technology. That has never been done. And you see some, and that's why I'm confident that it will work, because if you see some of the disruptors, they took a totally different approach. They didn't go the classical metal bending approach from the OEMs. They started from a pure IT platform. And I think if we really want to bring the necessary horsepower to the car, we need to learn much more from the data centers, from the high-end technology nodes, and see what it takes to bring that technology into the car, rather than bottoms up trying to step by step having a little bit more performance. I don't think that's going to work. So for me also, and that's the reason why the composition of chiplets is so important, my dream would be that I could build an automotive system where not all the chiplets would be fully hardened ASIL-D, ASIQ100, that for instance an Infineon chip, maybe that can be more commercial chip, where of course your safety complex, that we still need to be very, very old school, very safe, rigid design chiplet, and it's the combination I think gives us the flexibility to build state-of-the-art products with safety, with security in mind.
It sounds as if Imec is taking on a lot of the responsibility that individual OEMs used to take on in creating standards and platforms and even organizing the supply chain. Am I perceiving that correctly?
So Imec is all about de-risking the current problem statement, accelerating and de-risking, bringing the high-end technology into the market. So from that perspective, we see ourselves as providing the OEMs, the tier ones, the tier twos with the needed amount of data with their amount of thought leadership, how to do it, and then together with the ecosystem, of course. I mean, Imec is not going to build a head unit, or Imec is not going to build an ADAS platform, but we find it our task to look at what are the critical failure points and come up with answers to those failure points, and then give that to the tier ones, to the OEMs, to the tier twos. And sometimes we see that, hey, we have OEMs standing up and say like, now with this new chiplet approach, I'm really thinking about creating my own architecture. So in the past, most of the OEMs would never dare to start developing. You have a few disruptors would never dare to go for a 1 billion investment to really make a product that fits really their target requirements. But now if you have a chiplet environment and collectively we can create the marketplace for those chiplets, then maybe for an OEM it becomes viable to say, oh, now I want to compose my own architecture with the help of a tier one or tier two, whether it's then a tier 0.5 or a tier 1.5. I don't care. That's the whole supply chain is currently under flux. But it gives definitely new opportunities to OEMs, tier ones and tier twos to really build state-of-the-art architectures that really fulfill a very specific need, but not with the 1 or 2 billion cost adder to that.
Interesting. I have a question about supply chain, because I think the automotive industry has gone through a real crisis during COVID era. Right? I mean, that was a wake-up moment for everybody. Now, with chiplet, do you think that chiplets can change the automotive supply chain in your opinion?
In certain ways, it will accelerate shifts that are about to happen or are happening. I mean, 10 years ago, we couldn't dream of an OEM building their own ADAS platform, and now we already have those players. And if you then see what's happening in China, the innovation. Just for information, I also worked 1 year at Huawei, so I think it's incredible, the innovation and the speed that they're building those things, and absolutely, the more the heart of the car is going to be the brains, the ones who can really embrace those technologies. They will be the thought leaders, and those will be the prevailing car manufacturers of the future. And then it's up to you to say, well, is this then from the DNA? Is this an IT company, or is this a metal bending company? The future will tell it, but it's very easy to predict that the ones who can embrace the technology right now the best, and I'm not just talking about the in-car technology, because for every architecture that you create, you need to have a factory of AI learning models that at a side, so those things go hand to hand. So the companies who can really create next to the metal bending factory, the machine learning factory, and the inference platforms, the in-car compute platforms, the ones who manage all those three the best, they will have a clear benefit versus the others. So that's the name of the game and moving forward.
From a global business point of view, if you are able to create the kind of opening to OEMs and tier twos that you're talking about for the platform technology, are you in effect removing the differential advantage of North American and European auto companies and opening the global market to, say, India and China, since they have undeniable strengths in those other two platforms?
I would turn it around, and I would say that the reason why we are so successful in creating a conference of like 50 companies and where 80 people are attending, it's really because they're starting to realize that this is a mega shift that's happening, and right now I see the ecosystem moving. I see them finally getting the sense of urgency, and now it's really why are now OEMs or tier ones coming to Imec? It's really because they see those gaps in technology, and we can help them with pieces of that. So there is no other option. If we don't do it, then maybe in 10 years there's not going to be a US or a European indigenous car manufacturing market. And it's not going to be black and white. I think there's always going to be a place for premium brands, and they have certain features that in Europe we will still buy, and in the US we'll still buy. But the high volume market in Europe and US, I think that's a big question mark. How we can make sure that survives, and it's technology is going to be the differentiator.
Interesting. All right. Well, as a reporter, I always have to ask this question. It's like, by when? You see, you talked about that you're not going to just sit around for the next 2 years just doing research, right? And you also said that there's a finally sense of urgency is rising to the top. So by when do you have the solution for this? What's your estimate?
So I'm not going to give you a digital answer, because what we see happening is that by 2030, based on what we're seeing, we're very confident we're going to see the first chiplet-based architectures. Having that said, and that's my disclaimer, this might not be the Eureka full standardized, every interface to every chiplet is fully standardized. So I think we will take some compromises to get to 2030, and hopefully we'll have a fully established marketplace in 2035. Again, the chiplet itself, it has to happen. It's the only way. The volume of cars is not going to increase. If anything, it's going to be stable and it's going to decrease. Technology dictates that the cost of the technology is going to keep on exponentially growing. So if we don't do a right turn, our users are going to pay an exponential price for the car, or we have to do something different. And I think to do something different is trying to reuse technology as much from larger markets, from whether it's from the data center market, supercompute market, consumer market. We need to start reusing that technology who still has volume, and then building the safety case, building the security, building the reliability around it. I think that's the recipe for the next decade to keep cars state of the art, but still reliable, available, and safe.
That pretty well runs us out of time, but
Oh,
it
it's
also
already-
covers all the questions I had. So
Okay.
thank you very much. This has been fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is actually it sort of gives you the taste, I saw the sort of like something new really happening in automotive. It's promising.
It's inevitable. It's
Yeah, they're betting on this to survive, really. I mean, that's really
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, 5 years ago, OEMs would never step up to, and it's not just Imec, you have other research institutes as well, but they would never seek for help. And now the fact that they're actively seeking for help, I think that's the best evidence that the urgency is understood and they want to catch up. And they know the alternative if they don't catch up.
Well, this was a lot of fun. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts and perspectives. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
ours as well.
Yeah. We talk soon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye. Are you ready for new and unfamiliar challenges around die-to-die connectivity, chiplet integration, and system reliability? Synopsys, backed by its broad experience, close ecosystem collaborations, and comprehensive IP and EDA solution, offers help for fast chiplet-based multi-die system development. Visit synopsys.com/multi-die